Our next, keynote speaker is Roope Ruotsalainen from Frankly Partners. And Roope is going to speak today about digitalized customer experience, what is driven by technology, data and intuition, but how to create competitive value for customers, how to understand the blind spots of the customer experience, and how to ramp up tangent advantages by leadership of a digitalized world order. So those are the questions Roope is going to answer today. So Roope, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning on my behalf as well. Great to see you all here. I guess I'm the reason why the previous presentation was in English, and I think that it would be fair that I give my presentation in Estonian, but unfortunately I'm not just able. But I promise that if I come here also next year, I will learn at least a few sentences in Estonian. So, my name is Roope Ruotsalainen and I come from Frankly Partners. We are a customer insights and a business consultancy agency, daughter of Hasanet Partners, that is most awarded advertising agency in Northern Europe. My purpose for the next 40 minutes or so is to talk about customers and strategy. To give some kind of overview, hopefully for the upcoming day, and hopefully food for thought when it comes to creating better marketing and better digital business strategies. But before we go to actually the keyword customer, let's talk a little bit about digital and strategy. What do we mean by those things? One could draw some kind of line about digitality, the underlying factors from digital transformation to digital business strategy and to digital marketing strategy. Why I love these three jargon words is that really often we are talking about strategy. Strategy, everything, strategy is beautiful and we are updating the strategy. But what we are actually doing is that we are making actionable advertising. So that's why I want to also emphasize that when we are talking about strategy, it's about business. But just briefly about the background of everything, about digital strategy. There's a huge transformation that has been taking place for last 50 years, 20 years or so, as we all know. But in order to understand that how we should do better digital business strategies or digital marketing strategies, I'm pretty sure we have to understand that how the digital transformation is affecting our lives, besides the e-citizenship or e-residency of Estonia. This sounds a great innovation. If you think about the transformation that has been going on in the world past 20 years, one could put it in this kind of sentences, like what it actually means in the world is that more people have access to mobile phones than water closets, sanitation facilities. The world has changed pretty much. But, in order to understand what is the future, I pretty much assure you that it's important to understand your heritage, the history. If you think about past years, how the transformation changed the businesses, not only digital transformation, but transformation in general. Look at the history. How many candle makers can you remember from the past that became bulb manufacturers? Or how many carriage makers you know that became car producers? In order to understand this kind of major transformations that were in history, you can maybe get some perspective at how digitalization is changing our lives right now and especially in future. And basically the answer is that we don't know anything about future. Something that we know is that transformation have a strong tendency of creating ecosystems. Ecosystems that live on their own, like gaming, ecosystem of gaming industry or ecosystem of media industry. The ecosystems have tendency also of linking to each other, like ecosystems of mobility tends to link basically everything. Some clever guys from America once put the digital transformation in 3 boxes. It's about understanding the customer, creating new digitalized customer experiences. Digitalization is about making better processes, whether in knowledge work or factories, and it's especially about making better business, creating totally new kind of business models. But something that goes through all of these 3 stages, from the transformation that affects everything to the digital business strategy and digital marketing strategy, there is one element that combines everything, as human behavior. And that is the reason why customer is the key element of digital strategy. Of course, another thing is that what you can see from many research done in Western countries is that companies that put high emphasis on customer satisfaction or creating great customer experiences, they succeed. They make much better sales. If you treat customers well, your business goes better. That's just simple mathematics and how the figure shows. If you think about trends, what marketing people were talking about 10 years ago in the golden hype era of internet marketing, I think this was one of the sentences that was coming up constantly all the time. Customer is the king. Internet has empowered the customers, and customers are now able to decide everything, and so you have to listen to the customer. Didn't take too many years, and content became the King Kong. I guess that there is going to be a speech also about content later today. Something that I still claim is that the customer is definitely the king, but companies just haven't got it. And do you know why? Because there is a 400 years old ghost, Mr. Gutenberg, who still lives in most of the companies, within most of the designers, within most of the planners of online or internet marketing, and within most of the strategists. Mr. Gutenberg, if you don't happen to know, was the guy who invented the printing press, meaning the better way of using paper in 1640s. But why his ghost still lives there? The reason is this. Consumers use screens, but we tend to plan everything for A4 paper, unfortunately. Companies still do publish PDF files. It's like, what the fuck? They are meant for paper, not for the screen. Companies have strong tendency of creating e-magazines or online catalogs. Even the words refer to the E4 paper standard, not to the screens. And of course, since I'm representing an agency group, I have to blame also ourselves that most of the designers still and sketch on a paper, but consumers don't live on a paper anymore. But Mr. Gutenberg still lives within the companies. But if that was shortly about why the customer is important, then a few words about what the digital or a customer strategy is about, how we should see it. If you take a look on the classic strategy literature, or for example, Mr. Porter's work talking about competitive advantage. The key point in all of those papers, all of those books, is that you should benchmark your company to its competitors. You have to be either cheaper than your competitor, you have to be better than your competitor, you have to be different than your competitor. Mr. Porter, for example, was making this kind of graphics that saying that if your company strategy is to be cost leader, you have to aim in the customer experience for the self-service optimization and so on. But the key thing is that everything is based on benchmarking to the competitor. But do you know what? You are not doing business with your competitors. You are doing business for your clients. So I strongly advise not to benchmark on the competitors, but really to create proper value for the customers. That is where the rewards, where the winning numbers come from. Also, the research shows that the companies that are creating high value for their customers have high tendency of creating value for their owners, meaning that if you are really useful for your own client, you tend to be useful for the company's owners as well. So instead of seeing competitors, see the clients. But when you put this strategy, thinking, and clients' value creation into a world of digitality, the result is velocity. You need lots of speed. If you think about traditional strategy work, how to create companies, how to create competitive advantage, the life cycle is something like this. It takes a few decades to properly ramp up a company, like proper industrial way. You make a big investments, and once after a few decades you ramp it up, you have the next few decades time to exploit it until there comes two big shocks that you need to reconfigure the company and eventually disengage. But the world, and especially the customers, just don't function like that anymore. They haven't maybe ever functioned, but that's the world where the companies, especially industrial companies, have strong tendency to live on in a slow-moving life. Instead, companies actually in digitalized world order should be all the time creating transient value creation for their clients, meaning that you have to have all the time lots of small initiatives to make some kind of value for your client. All the time ramp up small initiatives. Some of them will eventually die. Some of them will become great success stories. It requires quite much from a business planning, whether you are a small company or a big corporation, to really make it happen, that you all the time create something new, process of innovation and process of creating value. But that's how succeeding companies nowadays and in future function. But once you start to think about creating better value for your clients, they are good to realize two barriers and not to crush on those. First, technology is a great slave, but don't let it be your master. Technology really easily becomes quite important in a corporation. If you think it from the organizational perspective, it quite easily makes the technology one of the most important assets in the company. And where it easily leads to, the technology starts to overrule your decision making. Most of the companies in Finland, where I'm from, I'm sure in Estonia, in UK, in America, everywhere in Europe, start from the middle when they are doing some kind of technological renewals, for example. It's really easy within a corporations to start to think to build new systems, to renew the systems. Think about an everyday situation. There is an IT manager who is coming to say to you that, our ERP needs to be updated. Our CMS is out of date. We need a new CMS. Or our salespeople cannot use the CRM properly anymore. We need a new CRM. Everything has strong tendency of starting from the inner ring from the systems. We start initiating technology projects or tool projects. Then next, there comes the processes. Once you start the process of making a new CRM, you start to think that how should we make our salespeople to use it? And then layer after layer, there comes the poor client somewhere on the outer ring. How we should encounter the client, which kind of experiences should we create for the client. And I can assure that although most of the technology projects unfortunately start like this, it is the easiest way to make failures as well. Instead, what winning companies tend to do, they don't start a technology project. They start to think about their client. Which kind of customer experience should we create? How should we handle our clients? Then there comes the planning of interactions, planning of touch points. Where do we meet them? Where do we talk to them? Eventually processes. And the last thing of planning is the technology. That is one of the most important things. But you cannot let the technology and IT systems to overrule your decision making. So, if you know how the banking industry, if you think the history of banking industry as an example, 15 years ago, Nordic countries were kind of world leaders in online banking. People were wired with their laptops and desktop computers. Banks quite quickly ramped up their online banking systems. They are still there. Online banks exist. At the same time, 15 years ago, people in Africa were not really using online banks. They didn't have desktop computers. They didn't have up-to-date mobile phones. But what happened in past just few years? Africans got up-to-date mobile phones. So banks obviously didn't build online banking for the kind of old-fashioned desktop computers. What they did was that they create totally new kind of mobile banking systems because people were already mobile. Now we are living in Western countries where mobile banking is just about to come. But in Africa, they are already lots ahead of us. And that's mainly, I claim, because banks in Nordics are dependent on the old legacy software. They are dependent on the old online banking software that is not flexible for the mobile banking use. And because they have started their processes by creating systems, not thinking the outer layer, that is the customer. In an organizational perspective, one could say that the ICT as we used to know it, has come to its end. And it's not only me saying, it's also Gartner research agency, for example, estimates that the role of the IT managers, the role of the chief IT officers is declining. They concentrate more and more on the technology, but instead there comes roles such as chief digital officer, that is a role that is looking at the business and the customer, not the IT perspective. Because the IT should be serving the business and client needs. Another perspective, what to kind of recognize, is the data. Yes, we live in the golden era of big data, and everybody has been talking about 2 years about big data. Is it really big? Is it small? That doesn't matter. But the main thing to understand is that data is really dangerous if you don't use it correct way. Yes, we have captured lots of data. I think 90% or even more of all of the data that there is being saved in the world, in the servers, databases right now, have been captured during few last years. The quantity of data is increasing. But the unfortunate thing is that even if we talk about big data, we still actually have quite small insights. We don't yet know about our customers maybe enough. Another thing is that data and analysis is quite often lacking the human insights. You can run analysis on nice tools. Maybe it gives you a correlation that there's something strong to do with the market share of Microsoft Internet Explorer and murder rate in America. It's a correlation. It's analysis. But there's no human touch. So this is a really big gap that we face in analytics. Another issue is kind of the fact that we have too many metrics. How you can really lead the marketing or any kind of digital initiatives when you are totally soaked and drowned in the metrics. I asked a year ago a good client of mine to list all of the key performance indicators that they were using for their digital marketing on a Word document. This is the list I got. The most important key metrics of their marketing. Something happens with the key performance indicators. Are you really going to make some kind of change in your marketing? How can you lead your marketing with such a mess? But that's the world where digital marketing people have tendency to live. But the even more important thing to understand with data and its problems is the leadership and organizational problems. They are great analysts, they are great tools, but even if they are making us good forecasts, it's about the business line managers to make the change. This is an unfortunate discussion that I keep on hearing within my client organization month after month. Analysts are making great work, but the business directors are not reacting. Maybe they are just too busy. Maybe they just don't understand how they should react. So the issue is not about, yes, let's have big data, it's cool. It's about we have to change our way how we lead, which kind of leaders we are. Next, I'll go through an example, one perspective to see how to go towards a customer-driven digital strategy. As a disclaimer, I could say that obviously there could be several different methods of going towards customer centricity, but this is one example. So I've been now saying the word customer quite many times, so I hope that if something you remember so far is that the customer is the centerpiece of whatever strategy work. Whether you talk about the business strategy, digital business strategy, or your strategy of advertising, if you want to put it. But something that I believe in is that instead of only understanding how the customer is and what they are doing, it's extremely important to understand what your customers are aiming to get done. Because I can assure you that if you are using some kind of analytics tools or trackings or whatever metrics you use, you know to some extent that what your customers are currently doing. But what most of the companies do not know is that what it goes in the head of their clients, what the clients are aiming to get done. The first step is to create some kind of a customer journey. Not the transactional one, but the soft customer journey. What the client is thinking throughout the customer journey. I was recently, a few months ago, working with an international financial corporation, a bank chain, with a project that aimed to understand the home-changing motives of the clients. Banks are making money, obviously, with mortgage by lending money to clients, but what they wanted to understand that which kind of journey there is, what goes in the head of the client. They knew, of course, really well that client walks into the bank when he has made an appointment. They knew really well what they are discussing in the bank, but what they didn't know was that what is the client thinking about. They know what the client is saying about, but they don't know what the client is thinking before coming to the bank. And once we started to study actually the customer journey, we realized that the part of the mortgage of getting a new house is just a small technical transactional detail. Think about yourselves. If you are changing a new home, what is the most important thing to you? The new home, the emotions related to the new home. But banks are only catering the technical detail, the transactional issue of giving you a mortgage or not giving you a mortgage. So the step 2 was to deeper understand the customer needs, their expectations, their decision-making patterns, but moreover, the blind spots between what they are aiming to get done and doing. And by recognizing these kind of pain and gain spots, this banking chain, for example, understood that the customers have strong, uncomfortable situations throughout the process of getting the mortgage, throughout the process of getting a new home. They are, for example, facing lots of uncertainties, not only regarding their financial situation. They have uncertainties regarding everything. They are happy about getting a new home, but they had strong uncertainties regarding that, should I move to this specific apartment? Should I move to a new area? If I decide to move to a new area, is somebody going to tell me that you did a good job? It's a good area, you should move there. Or when they are talking about their mortgage, of course the bank clerks are telling you that you can get a loan of 100,000 euro for your apartment. But what the customers were expecting is that somebody tells them that you are doing a good thing, to release the people from their uncertainties. And what this kind of blind spot recognition did was that the bank started to rethink about their digital services. They started to create service layers on their online banking, but also on their public side, that helps clients to understand about their current uncertainties and to plan for the future in order to kind of make the uncertainties go away. But before they actually launched the services, they obviously were tested. Because once you launch something, especially if you happen to work in a larger organization, you maybe want to make products that already have a good product market fit, meaning that you launch only products, you make a big launch only for products that are going to be successful, that you know that are going to be great successes. So what this bank, for example, did was creating small digital prototypes, making research that was actually made as a small game, and customers were playing through the home-changing journey and facing these new prototypes, and we got insights, obviously, that which parts of the service do function or could function, and which parts of them wouldn't. So, if there would be 2 sentences to which summarize the presentation, I guess those would be these 2. I've been saying the C word already so many times that I don't repeat it anymore, but I hope that if you remember something about last 30 minutes, is the C word. It's the centerpiece of everything. You make better business if you cater your customers. Well, now I said it, the word. If you cater your customers well, you make better strategies if you make them customer-centric and by understanding your customer behavior. And another thing is that different agile methods, such as prototyping and gamified research, have tendency of helping to creating a better product market fit. So when you launch something, launch businesses or initiatives or services that are developed already such a way that they have a great possibilities to succeed. Thank you. I wish to have lots of questions.
Thank you so much, Roope. What kind of questions do you have to Roope? Use the opportunity, please. So you demonstrated that well, the world is still the same. The customer is most important thing. So, what are the best ways to get as exact as possible when you target the customer? You can use prototyping. You can use agile. What else can you use?
I personally believe that you shouldn't be dependent on any single methodology. I think if you want to make a great success, you have to use different methodologies. Like when talking about getting like customer insights, when talking about understanding customers better, maybe you want to do some kind of research. Maybe you want to go on the shop floor level just to walk and talk yourself. Maybe you want to use analysts. Maybe you want to use big data. But the key point there is that not to be dependent or to look only a single methodology, because if you get a holistic perspective on customer, that usually has a tendency of providing better results, providing better insights how the customers are.
How do you decide in Frankly Partners what kind of methodology are you going to use on specific customer? Are there any highly appreciated guidelines you can share?
Our only guideline actually regarding the methodology is to be independent of any methodologies. We actually start all of our cases by studying all of the previous analyses and all of the previous research, because something that I've noticed at my work is that once you talk about making new research, making new analysis, there actually exists huge amount of information within the companies, whether it's a small business or a huge corporation. Interviewing yourself, interviewing the employees, interviewing the managers or shop floor level people, if you are in a brick and mortar business, is one of the greatest way to start, really to understanding that what do you already know, because really often information and insights do exist. They are just hidden somewhere. And then the next step is to actually do the analysis or research.
So listen, reflect and understand the customer. They are the key points.
That's how I believe.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thanks.